Not that they're bereft of talent. This is still a team that, now that they have a credible head coach with Super Bowl experience, that if they can get the quarterback fixed, they are going to be a dangerous team. So what did they do in the draft to improve themselves? Well, again, I think the only reason I didn't put them maybe a little bit higher was because of just the numbers. They only had 5 of the picks.
Right.
And the Russell Wilson trade hasn't really panned out so far. Sometimes you go, all right, well, you got to put the trade in, and that's a good thing, but we don't know if this is a good thing now. Anyway, but you take a look at the players, and I think that they landed 5 guys. Who knows? Maybe even their 7th round center. We talked about 7th round centers, and this team needs a center. So we talked about that these guys could all contribute. And they landed one of my favorite hybrids in the 6th round. Shocked that J.L. Skinner. Not shocked. I shouldn't say that, because I know teams probably looked at him as a tweener. I get it. But still, to get a talent like that in the 6th round, I thought that was pretty cool. So, yeah, I think the players they got for this team, they should definitely contribute.
Yeah, and they also, this didn't get put out there that much, too. They also traded for Adam Troutman, the tight end from New Orleans, during the draft. They traded 195 overall to New Orleans.
So, see,
got
to put Troutman. That a part of it. Yep.
That's a part of it, because he has experience with Sean Payton in New Orleans. And, this team was looking for a second tight end to kind of complement Dolchik, who's more of what we talked about with Kincaid when we talked about the Bills. He's a slot. You don't want him in the line. So they were looking for another tight end there, and they got him with the 6th round pick.
Yes.
And, so I'll start off with Skinner. I mean, this is a team that Kareem Jackson, 35 years old, he's still a free agent. It sounds like they're still talking to him about potentially coming back in a very specific backup role. Stearns has a hip injury last year. He needed surgery. He might be starting the season on the PUP list. Skinner tore his pec in February, so I do think that's going to be part of why he fell a little bit.
Okay.
He'll probably be ready for preseason action, but you never know. Those can heal a little bit slower than others. But my guess is he'll be ready. But I bring that up. The door's open for him to be someone that we talk about throughout the fall, as someone that is providing day 3 value to a team in the NFL. And he, like you said, he's got a very unique blend of talent and skills. And, they're in the AFC West. Any team in the AFC, you're going through Kansas City for trying to make some noise there. And no one knows how to defend Travis Kelce yet. And I brought up prior to the draft, it's got to be someone like this. Skinner,
interesting.
Julius Brents, that the Indianapolis Colts drafted. Someone that is athletic enough, but long enough and physical enough. And Skinner might not be the, heaviest guy in the world. He's a little lean, little skinny, but he's a physical dude, plays the ball exceptionally well. And I believe that's where this pick kind of was geared towards. A, good value because of the injury. B, there's some issues in that secondary at safety next to Justin Simmons. And they need to find a way to beat Travis Kelce. And I think this is going to be the route that they're going to take. So that was really good value, like you said, with Adam between Troutman, Forsythe, and Skinner, day 3. Day 2, Marvin Mims, they traded up for him. I think it was 5 spots. They love the character, A-plus worker. But really what they did here is they got a true downfield threat that has elite ball tracking skills, sub 4.4 speed to complement what they have. And if he pans out, this wide receiver room is going to be dangerous between Judy, Sutton, and Mims.
And it's also an insurance policy.
For sure.
So,
if they trade one of those guys away.
Yeah. And Patrick's got to come back from his injury. Hamler's always injured. But yeah, look, the only reason why I would be questionable about taking Mims in that spot is because I look at I felt one of their biggest needs, and unless they believe Sanders is going to be part of their edge rushing group, they did not add there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're relying on what they have. And they're also relying on some of the younger players to take big steps this year. So that's where I was that's why I'm saying maybe if there was an edge rusher available where they picked Mims, but who knows? Maybe on their board they would have, but maybe the specific guy just wasn't there. So we're going to be true to our board.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing draft weekend, but that market, it kind of started to fall apart on them a little bit. The edge rusher group, and just a few picks after Mims was taken. I mean, I believe it was only 4 or 5 spots after Mims was taken. They did take Sanders, but before Mims came off the board, I think that you saw a couple of like edge defending guys just weren't there. Maybe we thought Keon White was going to be there. Maybe we thought that Tui Pelutu was going to be there for USC, and they just weren't.
Yeah.
And they're going to run a new scheme this year, so we're not really completely sure what it's going to look like. But I got to imagine Drew Sanders is a part of that discussion.
Also, by the way, where do you think Sanders in this defense? How do you think he fits in? And also Baron Browning, because we still don't know how he fits.
Yeah, I mean, Browning, I think those guys, Browning's a former inside linebacker that started to show a little bit on the outside, and they have Benito and Randy Gregory, as if we want to call him reliable or not, he's slated to be the starter there. So you could make a case.
Actually, you want to call him unreliable or not?
Yes.
It's a better way of putting it.
I would.
Yeah.
I would call him unreliable. Yeah. Maybe Drew Sanders is that security blanket that if he doesn't pan out, Drew Sanders can be that guy.
At the very least, it gives him nice options, versatility options with Browning and Sanders.
I think that's where Sanders, the pick came from, really, was that you don't know what you're going to do with him yet. His best tape is as an outside pass rusher, but he did get his feet wet in 2022 in Arkansas off the ball, and he played well enough. So I think that that's going to be probably their objective number one between now and week 1 is to really figure out what they're doing inside-outside linebacker.
And they did not add another defensive lineman to this group except Mustipher after the draft. Nothing wrong with adding Mustipher. That's a nice pickup because you've got a couple of veterans in front of them. Decent veterans, solid veterans, but that's it. To add another guy like that, especially the type of position he plays, that will hopefully pay off as a good rotational guy down the way. But they didn't add someone opposite Zach Allen that So Awuzurike really does need to take the step up next year for sure. Yeah, unless they believe Henningsen is going to.
I liked Awuzurike coming out of Iowa State, and he flashed. Remember, I keep track of all the rookies every year, and he started to flash late in the year. So, and he brings a lot of versatility to the table. He can play a nose tackle. He's big and wide enough, but I like him as eventually being the DN that lines up across from Zach Allen.
And then we also talked about the potential need to add a corner. And possibly even their 2024 slot corner, and they took Riley Moss in round 3. So how does he fit with this team?
They traded a future pick. They traded a future third for him, and for this team, that might be a pretty high pick. So that kind of goes to show you what they think about Riley Moss, and I agree with them. I thought he was one of the top 7-8 corners in this class, especially if you're going to use him as a versatile inside-out type. So I love the pick. I love what he can offer this defense. And, when you have a corner like Surtain on one side, it gives you so many options in terms of how you're going to defend the other half of the field. And you get a guy like Moss that could play some safety if they still have some issues there, kind of what we already talked about. He can play nickel. And I'll tell you what, if Damari Mathis goes down or he starts to take a step back, Moss can be an outside guy. He could do it all.
All right. And then lastly, Forsythe. So to get him in the 7th round was nice, and especially with the big need that they have up the middle, because they drafted Wattenberg in the 5th round last year. A lot of people kind of surprised about that. They could have went in different directions, but now they've got 2 young center prospects. Because I think we've seen enough of Lloyd Cushenberry to know what we got there, and that's not a credible starting center.
Right.
So. What do you think about Forsythe's chance of starting even as early as opening day?
That's a stretch, only because I think the one thing I get a little worried about with him is anchoring. Can he really hold up against some of the bigger, more powerful interior defensive linemen?
Okay.
He's a guy that I just said, hey, he needs a year. I think he's got the same upside as some of these other guys that were drafted higher than him.
Okay.
To be a starter. I just don't see it being an immediate day one starting cut. But he's as experienced as it gets, and everyone that you talk to said he's as one of the smartest linemen they've ever worked with in the pre-draft process. So maybe you work with that. The brain matters at center, and you can make up for a lot of physical shortcomings if you have a guy that's in there that plays really smart.
All right. Now, by the way, were there any other free agents that they signed that we should keep an eye on?
Thomas and Coombe, outside linebacker from Central Michigan, because of what we already talked about, the instability, how unsure we are, how they're going to approach that spot on this roster. He was a Senior Bowl invite that a lot of people thought could be a really good power pass rusher from the outside.
Okay.
So, in a group that lacks size and power, he kind of has a standout trait there that might be hard to ignore.